It is now time for us to talk about rates. So what is a rate? And more specifically, what is a unit rate and how do we use them? Well, we're going to do that right now. A rate is a ratio with two different units, and I've given you some examples of what that is. Here are some ratios, right? A comparison of two quantities with division, and we've got two different types of units. We've got 6 games for every 5 days. So let's say you played 6 soccer games or football games, depending on what part of the world you're from, for 5 days, or 6 games per 5 days. We've got another rate, 120 miles per 3 hours, or 120 miles over 3 hours. That is a rate. A unit rate, well, unit means 1, so it kind of makes sense that a unit rate is a rate with a denominator that is equal to 1. And I've got a couple of examples of that. So these are just specific rates where the denominator is 1. You got $45 per 1 ticket, 29 students per 1 class. Unit rates often give us a very nice basis for comparison. We often draw up rates so that they become unit rates, and we'll figure out how to do that right now so that we can get a better idea of just what the ratio is that we have going on. So we've got a situation here. It says a lacrosse player scores 50 goals over 40 games. Find the unit rate. Okay, so first we need the ratio here. We're comparing goals to games. So the ratio that we would get from this problem would be 50 goals per 40 games. All right, so let's keep the units there just so that we know what we're comparing here. 50 goals to 40 games. Now that's the ratio that we have right there. The question is, how do we write that as a unit rate? Well, it's very simple. We need to get this so that this fraction has a denominator of 1. How do we do that? Well, there's 2 ways of thinking of it. You can divide both the numerator and denominator by 40, right? That would give us 1 in the denominator. Or think about it as dividing the numerator by the denominator. Either way that you want to think of it, it becomes simple, and you should use a calculator. So I'm literally doing this calculation in a calculator, 50 divided by 40. And when I do that, I get out an answer of 1.25. Well, what does that mean? What is that 1.25? Well, we can write that in a couple ways. We can write 1.25 goals per game, right? Because those are our units, so goals per game. Or we can write that as 1.25 goals, and it's important we have our units because we're talking about a real world situation here, per 1 game. However you want to write it. I usually prefer writing it this way, but again, we're breaking down the 50 goals per 40 games to get an idea of what does that really mean for goals per 1 game, a unit rate. All right, so I've got one other example right behind me right here that will go over how to find a unit rate, and then that'll be it for us for rates and unit rates as far as an introduction goes. Your family travels 42 miles in 3 hours. Find the unit rate. So 42 miles in 3 hours, I look at this and I think, well, that's 42 miles, again, keeping the units. Whoop. Would help if I could write an I, right? So I'll make that more of an I. 42 miles per 3 hours. So now, just as I did in that last problem involving the lacrosse games and goals, I'm going to divide 42 by 3 or divide the numerator and denominator by 3. Both ways work. So that's going to be the same as 42 divided by 3. And when you do that out in your calculator, you will get 14. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we have traveled 14 miles per hour. And I use an abbreviation for hour here, HRS. It's the same as hours. You could also write that as 14, and I'll write it out appropriately here, miles per 1 hour. So that'd be the unit rate. It gives us a better idea of just how fast we're going. 14 miles in 1 hour makes more sense to a lot of people as a standard measurement rather than 42 miles per 3 hours. That's all we got. I had fun. Hope you did too.